The call for negotiations. Ambassador Solane had called for an immediate cessation of hostilities, an olive branch extended in the midst of a storm. Their message had been clear, unmistakable in its gravity: stop the war, cease the futile and needless bloodshed. All of this, however, would hinge on the willingness of the Veritans to accept this gesture of peace. "We offer this not out of fear or desperation," Solane had spoken on the broadcast that now spanned across the vast stretches of the galaxy, reaching the corners of Veritan space and the chambers of the Galactic Council, "but out of hope. Hope that we can bring an end to this cycle of violence and loss." On New Terra, the message was received with a mix of apprehension and relief. The populace was war-weary, the conflicts having taken their toll on their psyches. The prospect of peace was a beacon of hope amidst the tension and despair that had gripped their society. Within the chambers of the Galactic Council, Solane's message echoed in the vast assembly hall. Various species, each representing their world, listened in silence as the human ambassador made his plea. It was a plea that challenged the very ethos of the Veritans and their belief in their inherent superiority. Ambassador Varro of the Veritans stood in stony silence, the weight of the decision looming over him. His pride wrestled with the realities of their situation, the glaring truth that the Veritans, despite their grandeur and power, were not faring well against the humans. The divisions within the Veritan leadership were stark, the hawks within the council pushing for a continued show of force, while the doves called for a reconsideration of their stance. Back on the Veritan homeworld, news of Solane's call for peace had reached their citizens, stirring a flurry of reactions. Some clamored for a continued fight, driven by their deeply rooted pride and belief in their invincibility. Others, however, began to question the path their leaders had chosen. They were tired, their lives upended by a war that seemed increasingly unwinnable. As the Veritans grappled with this existential crossroads, Solane, in the heart of human space, braced himself for the challenges that lay ahead. They had thrown their hat into the ring. It was now up to the Veritans to decide whether to take up the call for peace or descend further into the abyss of war. The Veritans' last stand. The Veritans, in a desperate attempt to turn the tide, had chosen to stage a bold and audacious offensive against New Terra, the cradle of human civilization. Their last remaining fleet of 5 gargantuan battleships, eclipsing the grandeur of any human ship, suddenly dropped out of warp space near the human homeworld. The Veritans made no attempt at subtlety. Their appearance was a bold declaration of war. Their leader, the fearsome General Kelzar, transmitted a broadcast to the entire human population. His voice echoed through every city, every town, every home on New Terra. "Humans," he boomed, "your reign ends today. Surrender now and we may spare your cities. Defy us and we will erase your existence from the stars." There was no mistaking the threat. The Veritan battleships, their hulls gleaming with deadly intent, loomed over New Terra like dark specters. The populace watched in awe and terror as the colossal enemy ships took positions, their weapons systems charging ominously. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Varro, now grim and resolute, watched the unfolding events with a sinking heart. He had tried to advocate for peace, to halt the rush into the abyss, but he had been overruled by the military council. Now, as he saw the mighty Veritan fleet threatening the human homeworld, he feared that the point of no return had been reached. On New Terra, however, the humans had not been idle. They had anticipated the possibility of such a desperate move from the Veritans and had prepared accordingly. As the Veritan demands boomed across the planet, a single voice responded, calm yet resolute. It was Ambassador Solane. "General Kelzar," he addressed the Veritan leader, "your threats are heard, but they will not sway us. We will not surrender, not out of stubborn pride, but because we have learned painfully what it means to be free. We are willing to negotiate, but we will not be coerced." As his words resonated through the telescreens, Solane gave a silent command. Suddenly, an intricate network of planetary defense systems sprung to life. Shields, unseen before, began to shimmer around the cities, and massive ground-to-space cannons pivoted towards the looming Veritan ships. In the Galactic Council, Solane's response was met with a stunned silence. For the first time in the history of the Council, a species was not only defying the Veritans, but they were also ready to defend themselves against their full might. Meanwhile, on the Veritan battleships, the command crew exchanged anxious glances. The human response was not what they had expected. It was a stalemate. But in their hearts, the Veritans knew they had overplayed their hand. Now, the ball was in the humans' court, and the entire galaxy watched with bated breath. The Battle of New Terra. As Ambassador Solane's words rang out across New Terra, General Kelzar's countenance hardened. The moment had arrived. "Very well, humans," he responded, his voice carrying an edge of desperation. "You have sealed your fate." With those words, the Veritan fleet opened fire. Thousands of plasma blasts and missiles streaked across the inky blackness of space towards New Terra. Across the planet, people watched with bated breath as the deadly onslaught hurtled towards their homes. The human defense systems hummed into action. From the ground, a web of brilliant blue light emerged, rising to envelop the planet in an enormous shield. The incoming Veritan fire crashed against it, resulting in a spectacle of sparks and flares. New Terra stood, untouched beneath its protective barrier. Then came the second wave of human defense. Ground-to-space cannons returned fire, launching a barrage of proton beams towards the Veritan fleet. Each beam cut through space, swift and deadly. The Veritan shields, the most advanced in the known galaxy, flickered under the onslaught, struggling to hold off the human retaliation. On the Galactic Council, an uneasy silence fell over the room as the councilors watched the battle unfold. Veritan Ambassador Varro stood there, his face pale as he watched the assault on New Terra. The humans, it seemed, were not just surviving the Veritan onslaught, they were retaliating. Their defenses, their technology, and their resolve were far beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They had grown, evolved, and were no longer the fledgling race that had been exiled centuries ago. Back at New Terra, the battle was nearing its climax. The relentless bombardment from both sides was taking its toll. Despite the Veritans' advanced technology, their ships were beginning to falter under the weight of the human counterattack. The shields flickered, then wavered, and finally gave way. The once mighty Veritan fleet was laid bare to the ferocity of the human counterstrike. The decisive blow came from the capital city, Concordia. The city's massive central cannon, its most powerful weapon, unleashed a torrent of energy. The proton beam shot across the distance, connecting with the leading Veritan battleship. It cut through the hull like a hot knife through butter, splitting the colossal ship into two. The ship's power core destabilized, resulting in a massive explosion that sent shockwaves across space, further damaging the surrounding Veritan ships. The tide of the battle had turned. The Veritans, having lost their flagship and with their remaining vessels critically damaged, had no choice but to retreat. As their ships limped away from New Terra, it was clear that the humans had won this battle, and perhaps the war. Their display of resistance, technology, and sheer resolve had not only defended their homeworld, but had also sent a clear message across the galaxy. Humans were a force to be reckoned with. The age of Veritan dominance was over. The entire galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Veritans retreated. They had witnessed the rise of a new power and the fall of an old one. They had seen the underdogs stand up and not just fight, but win against a seemingly invincible foe. The Battle of New Terra was over. The humans had defended their homeworld and had shown their mettle to the galaxy. The message was loud and clear. Humans would not be bullied or threatened. They were here to stay, and they were not to be underestimated. The unconditional surrender. With the Veritan forces routed and their pride crushed, the once indomitable race had to face the inevitable. Their grand fleet, once the galaxy's most formidable, was now reduced to a scattered collection of battered warships. The silence of defeat echoed through the ranks of the Veritan Empire. Back at the Galactic Council, the atmosphere was tense. The councilors, having just witnessed the astounding military prowess of the humans, were coming to grips with a profound shift in the galactic balance of power. Ambassador Solane stood tall and resolute, his face a mask of grim determination. "Today," he began, his voice echoing through the hall, "we have shown you the mettle of humanity. We have shown you that we are not the fragile race you once thought us to be. We were hunted, driven from our homes, and almost eradicated. We found a new home, we rebuilt, we regrouped, we grew, and we developed. And we have come back to reclaim what is ours. We will not be threatened, we will not be bullied, and we will certainly not be eradicated." His gaze then shifted to Ambassador Varro, who, despite his race's recent defeat, stood tall, maintaining a stoic front. "Ambassador Varro," Selene continued, his tone growing softer, "we do not wish for more destruction, more loss. But know this, we are ready to fight until the last man if we must." With a sigh, Selene paused and looked around the council chamber. "But it does not have to be this way. You have seen our power. You have seen the result of relentless pursuit. This war benefits no one. We urge you to reconsider. The choice is yours, Varro." Varro, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. "Ambassador Selene, you leave us no choice. We have witnessed your power, and we have felt the sting of your wrath. It is clear to us now that we underestimated you." He paused, taking a deep breath. "In the light of these recent events, on behalf of the Veritan Empire, I, Ambassador Varro, offer our unconditional surrender." Gasps filled the council chamber. The Veritan Empire, known for its fierce warriors and advanced technology, had never before bowed down to any race. Yet, here they were, admitting defeat to the humans, a race they had once deemed weak and insignificant. Ambassador Selene merely nodded, accepting the surrender with grace and dignity. "Let this be a lesson to us all," he concluded, his voice filled with solemn resolve. "The pursuit of power without respect for others only leads to one's downfall. It's time for us to move forward, to create a galaxy where each race is respected and valued. Let's not make the same mistakes again." With those words, the chapter of a brutal war came to an end. The humans had not only defended their homeland, but also re-established themselves as a powerful entity in the galaxy. But perhaps more importantly, they had set a precedent for the rest of the galaxy, showing that respect and diplomacy could lead to strength and unity. As the Galactic Council erupted into a storm of conversation and debates about the future, one thing was clear: the galaxy had forever changed. A new era had begun, one where humans had carved their rightful place among the stars, ushering in a new age of balance and respect among the interstellar community. The reign of the Veritan Empire had ended, and a new chapter had begun for all races in the galaxy. A chapter where humans were not merely survivors, but influencers of peace, power, and progress. Continuing his speech, Selene declared, "A treaty will be drafted that will lay down the terms of the Veritans' capitulation and the course of our future diplomatic relationships. We advocate for coexistence and mutual respect among all species in this council." His gaze swept over the room, resting momentarily on Varro. "And we insist this includes the rights of humans as well." His words painted the dawn of a new epoch not only for humanity, but for the entire galaxy.